3, verse 5. It says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. All right. Did you want verse 6 too? It says, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. All right, we'll turn the time over to Brother Cruz at this time.
Good morning, brethren. Happy Sabbath. Hope you're feeling okay. It's good to see the church full of angels. Also people, you're all angels. Sorry, forgot about that. Just used to it. I'm also feeling okay. Thank God. I came from New York, so don't be afraid of me, but I won't be hugging anybody, so I won't spread anything. But I already had like 10 days of quarantine, so I haven't gotten sick, so hopefully 4 more days won't matter. But God is good. I've been hearing this song from Steve Green all this week that has really touched my heart. And it says, God so loved the world that he was willing to bruise his son. Isaiah says, God bruised his son. He was bruised for us, right? Just so that Jesus could reach us. Just so that we can obtain that wonderful salvation that only he can offer. And I think when we come to the full understanding of what the cross is, because I think we just have a bunch of theories in our head, the sanctuary, all these things that are so important. But when we come to see the sacrifice of Christ and understand it purely, I think we will come to a closeness with God that maybe only the primitive church has experienced. We need to experience. The church is in a situation that we need to go back and experience that 1888 movement. The 1888, from the beginning, our church has been a church from 1844, a church that likes to debate, that likes to discuss, that likes to argument, that likes to fight with others about the truth. Until God in 1888 showed that we need to change, we need to be Christ-centered. And I think after more than 100 years, we're kind of losing that again. And we need to go back to that Christ-centered. You know, it says that the 144,000, they follow Jesus wherever he goes. That means every thought, everything they read, everything they see, their whole life is about Jesus. It doesn't matter if they're working, if they're driving, if they're seeing patients in New York, Jesus is there. And clearly the book of Revelation tells us in the message to Laodicea that the last church would be a Christian church that would say that they know everything, but that they lack Jesus. Where's Jesus? He's outside knocking the door, waiting for us to open that door. And I think we're still having that experience. We really, really need to be willing to open that door. So, I had to say that because I think Sabbath worship without Jesus is not a Sabbath worship, because I am going to talk about health. But I hope in the midst of this health, of this topic, that we could still see Jesus. And I know we are all tired of this COVID-19 things, and we don't want to hear about it anymore. We don't want to wear masks anymore. We don't want to do any of this stuff anymore. I don't either. But the fact is, this coronavirus is going to be with us for a while. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope the experts are wrong. I don't consider myself an expert. But this thing is going to be with us for a big while. And it might get worse before it gets better. So I just want this morning to maybe clear up some little facts about the coronavirus. There are many sensational ideas about what it is, how we should protect ourselves, etc. There are also things that we don't understand, because we don't understand this is a new virus that acts differently. Many people, and we're going to talk about this in the topic, many people say, oh, it's just another flu virus. It's not going to go and pass and that's it, you know. But we're going to discover it's not just another flu virus. I wish it was, really. I just wish it was, but it's not. So, God wants us to be knowledgeable, right? He wants us to follow His way and to be able to obey Him. We are not to fall in the sin of presumption. What is presumption? Anybody knows? I'll let you participate.
You assume something.
To assume something, that's true. In the religious experience, how can we experience or how can we commit the error of presumption? When we expect God to fulfill His promises towards us without fulfilling the conditions He has required. That's presumption. Okay? That's a simple explanation. So, I want to start the topic with this church in Korea. It's the Seon, if I'm saying it right, it's the Seonji Church of Korea, Southern Korea. This is a church that is composed mostly of young people, something that we lack here. We need more young people. But this is almost like 95% young people because they mainly try to reach the people who are in colleges and universities and studying, etc. So about 95% are youth. And they're really devoted to their beliefs. Unfortunately, you know, they had this belief that many people today believe still. This is one of the things that many people say when they approach the topic of coronavirus. The Seonji Church was teaching their members to, don't worry, God will protect you. You don't have to wear masks, you don't have to, let's all come together. And this is a big church. They used to get together, the total members in the world is like 245,000, and they used to get together in the church like hundreds and hundreds together without any type of protection. They used to pray together and out loud and come together. And to the point where many of those members started to get sick. And they would tell them, the members, that it's not a sin to lie if you do it with a good reason. So they told them to lie about saying that they were sick or that they were members of this church. So as a result, that church became a hot spot in Korea. To the point where, well, this is some of the things they were teaching them: secrecy, the banning of health masks, praying in close proximity, etc. Okay, and the leader right now could face murder charges because of all the people that have died as a result. Did you know that there were like 18,000 people who actually contracted coronavirus in Korea? More or less that number. And it says that as of June 8, 2020, the total of 5,213 cases were related to the Shincheonji Church in South Korea. That is almost half of the people infected in Korea were due to the negligence of this church. And you can see the graph here. Most of those cases were traced to this church, and you could see it goes over the 5,000 limit. Okay, that's from February 18 to June 8, 2020. Of course, now they're wearing masks, now they're protecting themselves, now they're saying they're going to cooperate with the health department, etc., etc. But I'm just showing you like how the sin, we can easily commit the sin of presumption. I have never seen it anywhere, that phrase, the sin of presumption, but I'm calling it the sin of presumption because it is the Bible says in the book of Romans that anything that does not come from faith is sin, right? So that's why I call it the sin of presumption. And we know that the Bible many times says that He will protect us. It says in Psalm 91:2, I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. And all this is true. My God, in Him will I trust. Amen to that. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror of the night. Just in case you don't know, I'm afraid of the night. I have to have a light on, even at this age, you know. So, but He says, thou shalt not be afraid of the terror of the night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. Okay, that's a very important one. Because if you were in a war, you knew this promise, would you automatically expose yourself to all the bullets flying around because God made this promise? Would you? None of us would, right? Because we know that it's not presumption, it's faith. We know if we were forced to be in that situation, God will protect us. But just like that, no, it's not going to happen. Nor of the pestilence. We're right now going through the pestilence, right? The pandemic. That walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. It says, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. And this is the psalm that I open my Bible every night. I just keep it there so that the whatever bad spirit won't come bother me. Whatever I'm afraid of. See, the problem with me is that I grew up, my mother, you know what was our lullaby? Horror movies, you know. And we would go to sleep and she would put these thriller monsters eating each other as zombies, and that was, so it just stuck in my brain. Stuck in my brain, and that fear stayed there. So, but it says here, the memory text, trust in the Lord with all thy heart. But does it stop there? It says, lean not unto thine own understanding. It says, in other words, yes, you are to trust me, but don't believe things your way. Do it my way. Okay? Trust in the Lord and do what? Do good. Say, whatever is good. Whatever you do to protect yourself from disease, from health, it's good. You do everything you can, and then you trust the Lord. It's just like when Jesus was going to resurrect Lazarus. Jesus was going to do something that was impossible. But there was something men could do. What was that?
Roll the stone.
So I'm not going to roll the stone. You do it. You could do that. Let me do the impossible. You do the possible. So he expected them to roll the stone. And after they rolled the stone, then he says, Lazarus, come forth. And of course, you know why he said Lazarus, right? Because if he didn't say Lazarus, maybe all the people dead would be resurrected. That's how powerful Jesus was. Everybody will be resurrected. But he had only Lazarus, please. Just Lazarus. Okay, so we are to, and it says, if we trust in the Lord and do good, and it's not trying to be saved by works. It's not that. It's obedience. It's just obedience. Our salvation is through grace, by grace through faith. But still, if you read the verse, that's verse 8. If you read verse 10, it says that God then created us for good works. That means that transformation, that born-again experience that we have, makes us live a new life. So we don't only trust the Lord, we also do good. You know, Jesus was tempted with Psalm 91. The devil took him to the top of the temple and told him, hey, look how beautiful Jerusalem looks. What? Wow, this is very high. You know something? You're the Messiah. So since you're the Messiah, you can throw yourself down there and nothing will happen to you. Nothing. Why? He quoted, and the devil quoted the Bible. He quoted this text. It says, for he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands. Don't worry. Lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. So don't worry. Throw yourself. God will protect you. He'll send you angels. Not even a stone will touch you. What did Jesus answer? Thou shalt not tempt the Lord. Like, that was the devil was tempting Jesus to commit the sin of presumption. And Jesus had victory over that sin. Let us not commit that same sin. God, yes, the promise in Psalm 91 is to protect. But you don't do it under presumption. You do it under faith and under obedience. And then God protects you. When Jesus told the disciples, you could drink poison and serpents can bite you and nothing will be able to have victory over you, did that mean that they would go automatically and drink the poison? Oh, I'm going to prove you I'm a disciple. Let me take this cyanide. That was the meaning? That what Jesus meant? One of the major methods of assassination at that time was poisoning. So it was to prove, and Paul proved, that he was a minister of God, not by trying to prove, but he was bit by a serpent and nothing happened to him. Okay, well, as we could see here, about 9.7 million people have contracted the coronavirus, and that's worldwide, and for almost 500,000 people have died of the virus. So this is not a hoax. This is not something, there's some people, they are so conspiracy theory that they say, the coronavirus, that's a hoax, don't believe that, it's not true. The same people, you ask them, how about the Holocaust? The Holocaust, did that really happen? Oh, that didn't happen. There are people who believe the Holocaust didn't happen. The same people, you could go on YouTube with all these don't worry, it's a hoax, it's all a hoax. 130,000 people dead in the United States prove that it's not a hoax, okay? It's not a hoax. Fortunately, the cases are rising. That is because there's more testing, but in the United States, but even though there's more new cases, the deaths are decreasing, which is good, and I hope it continues to decrease, even though some states are having a little trouble, right? Like Texas, Arizona, Florida. These are states that did nothing at the beginning and are not enforcing these guidelines. And when I mean enforcing, I don't mean putting people in prison or violating anybody's constitution. I don't believe that. But they should, be more strict in their guidelines. Well, let's talk about Tennessee. Well, let's talk a little closer. We're not going to talk about Nashville. We know Nashville's a problem, and there's different counties where there's a problem. Let's talk about our area. Is our area a problem? Well, the reality, it is not. We have the luck that we are not living in a hot spot. Okay? So you could see here that Perry County, which is where Lobelville is found, there's only 28 cases and no deaths. Has been no single deaths of coronavirus. Praise the Lord. Decatur County, which is, I think that's Parsons, right? Parsons, etc., is only 17 cases and no deaths. Where I live, Hohenwald, only 5 cases and no deaths. So basically, we are not living in a hot spot area. When I mean hot spot, I don't mean refer to Wi-Fi. We do have Wi-Fi in the church, just in case you want to know. But it's not that. I mean, we're not living in a place where coronavirus is ravaging. So we can have a little looseness, a little bit of looseness. Maybe not inside the church, we should follow the guidelines, but outside we could have a little looseness because the possibility of you contracting the coronavirus here is very, very, very low. But it could happen. It still could happen, and it doesn't mean you should be careless and not protect yourself. So that is the benefit of the advice Ellen White gave us to what? Live in the country. When you live in the country, did you know that just smelling the aroma of the trees stimulates your immune system? Just walking in the trees. That is scientifically proven. I'm not making it up. Didn't bring any of the quotes, but it is proven. Just walking in the trees stimulates your immune system. The breath, the fresh air, everything. Plus, we're automatically, even if you don't believe in it, we're automatically practicing social distance because who lives close to another? My neighbor is like, I don't even see my neighbor. They're hidden somewhere in the bushes. And I have another one all the way over there, like 2 miles from me, and the other one is like a mile. I practice social distancing automatically. So you see, the benefit of living in the country is tremendous, following God's way of living. Now, one of the arguments that are said about the coronavirus is, it's just another flu, don't worry. But science has been showing that this is a virus that actually can imitate many other diseases. And we could see here, you could have conjunctivitis, which you thought it might have been some other type of infection, and it could be coronavirus. You could develop gastrointestinal flu. The coronavirus can also cause stomach flu, if you want to call it that, okay? Cause diarrhea, vomiting, nausea, abdominal pain, etc. It can do that too. It's not only the lungs, and you could have nausea also. So it affects the gastrointestinal tract. And at the beginning, I used to think, and many people still think, that, the virus, just drink lots of water frequently, and the virus will go into your stomach, and the stomach acids will neutralize the virus. I used to believe the same thing, until data came out. Okay, they're finding the virus. They're finding the virus in the fecal matter. Okay, so that means the virus is not killed. It's going through your digestive tract, into your colon, and it's present there. So digestive juices do not destroy the virus. That's a myth number one that I myself believed at one time. The virus also works similar to HIV. Did you know that? It attacks the T lymphocytes, the white blood cell. HIV attacks this type of white blood cell and replicates inside the cell and multiplies, and it kills the cell. The coronavirus actually is able to penetrate the T cells. It doesn't multiply like the HIV, but it penetrates it and it prevents it from doing its job. So it suppresses your immune system, very similar, using the very similar mechanisms as the HIV virus. The coronavirus basically attaches to every organ in the body, especially it has an affinity for the lungs because it's easy. It comes in through here and it goes into our respiratory tract, so it's easy and it has easy exposure to the lungs. And the lungs have a certain type of receptor called the ACE2 receptor, which is more prevalent in the lungs. But every organ in the body has that receptor where the virus could attach. COVID-19 can cause rashes. You could develop a rash and think it's something else, and it's actually the same coronavirus doing it. I'm going to try to make this a 20-minute, I told Brother Boykin it was going to be a 5-minute, but I'm going to make it 20-minute, okay? You give me permission, right? Okay, 20-minute presentation.
Good, no, make it short.
Okay, we'll try to not make it too long either. Okay.
Don't make it short.
Oh, okay. To make it short? Okay.
No.
I'm an expert making...
Do not make it short.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So yes, COVID-19 can cause rashes. So you can see it's starting to imitate different diseases, and you're thinking it's something else when it's the virus causing it. COVID-19 can infect the brain. It has been found in the cerebral spinal fluid of people suffering meningitis. And it has been known to cause inflammation of the brain, encephalitis. Other conditions that are connected, headaches. The headache itself is a sign that the virus is starting to affect the brain area. Seizures have been found to be caused by the virus. The loss of smell and loss of taste, which happens with many of the infections, but it's first, the loss of smell and loss of taste is a sign of zinc deficiency. So when you have that, you need to saturate your body with a lot of zinc. And that until that sensation goes away. What I have seen with patients with COVID-19 is that if you give them zinc like every 2 hours, in like 3 days their appetite comes back and they start eating like a horse. So they start feeling better, okay? But the other thing that scientists are worried is that the virus is invading those nerves that have to do with smell, and that through the virus they could use it like a road to go to the brain. That's one of the possible mechanisms, other than through the blood flow, the blood-brain barrier, etc., all those methods. So you could see that the COVID-19 can affect the brain also. Common symptoms that we know: fever, fatigue, dry cough, shortness of breath, etc., 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 decreased white blood cells, but it also can affect the kidneys. It has been found, the virus has been found inside the tubules of the kidney, where the kidney usually filters all the stuff from the blood. It's been found there. And one of the side effects when there's severe inflammation is kidney failure.
No question.
Kidneys start to shut down.
So you said that there's a decrease in the white blood cell?
There could be decrease and there could be increase initially, but usually at the end is decrease, yeah.
Because, I mean, if you have a flu, usually you have an increase in the white
In the flu, usually the lymphocytes increase, and usually the neutrophils decrease, and that's because it's a viral infection. So in this case, there should be an increase of lymphocytes, but since the COVID attacks the lymphocytes, many times you see an opposite picture. You see a little bit higher the neutrophils, and the lymphocytes are very low because it's attacking it. But it should be opposite. The picture should be opposite. Okay? Also, well, of course, one of the most common things that happens, and this is what caused the death of most people who have COVID-19, is acute respiratory distress syndrome. In other words, you die of suffocation. Instead of air, there's so much inflammation. When you talk about pneumonia from other diseases, usually only part of your lungs get swollen. But in COVID-19, both lungs get inflamed. When you look at it in an x-ray, it all looks white. The whole lung gets inflamed, both lungs. And it causes so much inflammation that the fluid starts coming out of the capillaries of the circulation, and it starts filling up with water, like you see here. So instead of air is what's supposed to be there and go into your bloodstream and into exchange from carbon dioxide and oxygen, etc. But that's not happening. What's happening is water is filling up there so they can't breathe. Okay? And that's how most people die of COVID-19. But one thing that we're learning now is that coronavirus causes coagulation of your blood. And what's interesting is that even though they're using heparin in the hospitals, even though they're using heparin, they are still coagulating. They can't stop the coagulation. So many people who die of COVID-19 die of strokes, heart attacks, and the organ failures that happen is because there's blockage due to clots. Some of the breathing problem is due because there's no oxygen that could go in to the alveoli, the little sacs of the lungs, because they're blocked by clots. So you have water building up, you have clots building up, you have strokes, you have everything. And this is because in the coronavirus infection, there is a massive inflammation, which they call the cytokine storm, which is imagine like a tornado that passes through Perry County and takes all the houses in a few minutes. That's exactly what's happening inside the lungs. It's like a tornado that goes through your lungs and destroys tissue massively. And this inflammation is causing trouble in the blood vessels, in the heart, in the kidneys, in the brain, and a lot of the organs that are in the body, and causing multi-organ dysfunction. But it's the inflammation that's provoked by the virus. And what's horrible about all this is that inflammation that is provoked by the virus, it's your same body provoking it. I mean, it's your body trying to kill the virus, but it can't, so it throws some extra bombs. It's like a war, and they want to when they try to kill the Japanese, and they throw all these massive bombs from the ship. That's the cytokine storm. It's actually your body trying to defend itself, but instead of defending itself, it's destroying its own self. And one of the mechanisms that are used for people who are in the last stage of coronavirus is the ventilator, right? The ventilator, well, unfortunately, 86% of the people, and there's some studies that show up to 97%. This is not sense of sensationalism. You could look for it in the medical literature. Even the medical doctors know this. 86% minimum of people who are in the ventilators die. And this study shows that ventilators can actually cause lung injury and even multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. Now, that doesn't mean ventilators are bad 100%. There are moments when you do need them, but they are developing methods to make it more effective and less damaging. And one of the methods that they have discovered that can help, not in many cases, prevent you from getting on a ventilator, and second, if you're on a ventilator, they could put the flow, make sure the flow is very low. Look, it's a beautiful lady's coming in. Look at that. Okay, sorry. It's my wife. What they're doing different mechanisms, but one of the mechanisms is, guess, it's very complicated. It's called pronation. You know what pronation is? Oh, this is just showing that 86% according to different studies. Some studies say up to 90%, okay? But what they found is if they put the patient in a prone position in an early stage, prone means facing down. Make them sleep on their stomach. They could be prevented to be put on a ventilator. Sometimes when they found that they have people where their oxygen level is 60%, which is about what that's the point where they put him on a ventilator, and there's an Adventist doctor who gives a testimony about this. He does this in the hospital. It's interesting. You could look online in YouTube's Roger Seaholt. I think that's his name. But to me, he's the most knowledgeable in coronavirus right now in the church. And and he explains that when they put the person in prone position, in just a few hours, the oxygen levels goes to 100. That's it. And it's because being in that position, the pressure on the lungs, that's my explanation, and I think he explains that too, causes the alveoli to empty their water content and permits oxygen exchange. So that's apparently the reason. Okay. Yeah, there's a study, and here's a study from the New England Journal of Medicine, prone positioning in severe acute respiratory distress. And it says here that just by doing that in 90 days, the mortality reduced to 23, from 41% when they put the patient on prone position, it went down to 23%. So that's a big, big difference just by putting somebody up, flipping them like a pancake, you know. That's really a tremendous difference. Okay, now let's talk about masks. Everybody wants to talk about it, so I talk about it. Okay, we hear all different stories about masks, and this is not only in the church. Doctors are divided about it, even though now they're coming a little more to their senses, and the government is divided about it. The leaders are divided about it. It's become a political thing. Trump says, "I'm not going to wear a mask," you know, and etc. So, go Trump. The World Health Organization versus the CDC. The World Health Organization says you don't have to wear a mask; it doesn't protect you. But then they go contradict themselves, say, just let the practitioners use them. You scratch your head, say, well, if it doesn't protect us, why do the practitioners have to use it? You know. It seems like they're just trying to guide the mask use for the practitioners. Everybody else die. You know. I don't know. That's the way I kind of capture it. But they believe that masks are not important. While the CDC says, yes, wear a mask. Well, latest studies show that masks do protect. Now, masks don't protect 100%. I don't think anything protects 100%. The only thing that could protect 100% is God, okay? But would you ask a police to go in fire without his vest to protect him? That vest doesn't protect him 100%, because only protecting him here, his legs, his head is exposed. The worst part is exposed. So it's not protecting him 100%. Will you tell him to go still take off that vest? It's not going to protect you 100%. Did you know that the seatbelt only protects you 46%? So shouldn't we use seatbelts then in the car because it doesn't protect you 100%? But it does reduces the risk of death. You flying out through the window and hitting some other log or something. Well, an old lady. Okay, hope not. So yes, so just because something doesn't protect 100% doesn't mean it doesn't protect. That it's no good, okay? As a matter of fact, many of the things we do, many of the things done in medicine are just simply done because they protect 5 to 10%. The flu vaccine, sometimes it protects 40%, sometimes it only protects, where was 1 year, it only protected 12%. Well, they say, well, it's the only thing we have, so we got to do it anyway. So, of course, that's not the only thing we have, but you know, there are many things that are done because even if it doesn't protect 100%, because it's the best we have, okay? So, just because it doesn't protect 100% doesn't mean you discard it completely, okay? Okay, so this is the first principle we need to understand. Infection is usually mostly spread during the early stages when you don't have any symptoms. That's the first step. So, I feel okay. Well, everybody feels okay, but they have all this virus in their nose and in their mouth and you don't know it. You see, just like in the spiritual war, we're fighting an invisible enemy. In the spiritual, we're fighting the devil and the demons. We don't see them. And there are some of you right now here. I hope not. But there could be a few here. Try to get you to fall asleep like I'm seeing. Just kidding. And I wish the devil was visible, because even though I know he'll beat me, I'll give him a cross and a punch and an uppercut and do whatever I can. But the same thing, I wish the coronavirus was visible. I could give it an uppercut, a cross, a few jabs, you know, but it's not. Even though it's not completely invisible, we can see it. And because we can't see it, I don't know if this brother has it. I mean, this area here, like I said, Perry County, Lewis County, Decatur County, these are counties where the possibility of infection is very low. But how about if somebody comes from New York like I did, and I'm infected and I don't tell you? And, or I don't know about it. Or somebody comes from the center of Nashville, or you go to Nashville, do all your shopping, and come over here to Lobelville to Sabbath, you know. It's an invisible enemy. We don't know. So protection, you're protecting not only yourself, you're mostly protecting your brother. And the Bible says, love your brother like yourself. So even if you don't believe that it protects you, you should do it at least to protect your brother, because it creates a barrier. So if the virus tries to come out, it doesn't come in a projectile form. It just disperses around you. And that's where social distancing comes, because you're not that close to the brother, so it may disperse around here. Without the mask, we're going to show it. mean, it just seems like it's not the government, really. It's you. I mean, there's been churches, complete churches, who are not opening because they don't want to wear a mask. I mean, we've been open for like almost 4 months, right? We're trying to follow as much as possible, trying to protect you, we're trying to protect ourselves, we're trying to do the best we can for everybody. It's not that we're being controlled by the government or anything like that. We're just following some basic guidelines so we will keep our church open.
4 weeks.
Huh?
They're open every now 4 weeks.
Well, if you count just the days you come, yeah.
6 weeks.
We haven't been open 3 months already?
No, we're closed.
About
Yeah.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Really? That's all? Wow, feels like a year. Okay.
About.
Well, anyway, even the gentleman with the nice, beautiful white hair back there, he says, there's no churches you could find here, you know? There's no churches you could find around here that are open. So he came here, and I'm glad to have you here, brother. I'm glad to, it's a privilege to have you here. Yes, so it's not the government trying to keep our churches closed. It's, no, they're trying to protect us. I mean, the Bible says, let us obey the government as long as they don't violate our biblical principles. We know there will be a time when they will try to violate our biblical principles, and we'll have to stand, or we'll have to disobey. What did Martin Luther call it? Martin Luther King called it? It's, that was a special name for it. Non-violent disobedience, civil disobedience, whatever. But this is not one of those cases. This is not one of those cases where we should try to disobey the government because they are looking out for our welfare. And this thing about wearing masks, it does not violate any other of our principles. Now, if they start saying they're going to put you in prison, you're going to wear a mask, and all this stuff, then that's unconstitutional. But it is for our benefit. We should do this voluntarily. We can't obey the government because then we will do the same when the Sunday law comes. I've heard people say that. See, they make equivalent the mask with the Sunday law. What is the connection? There's no connection. This is protecting our health. Sunday law is a total different matter. It's like there's people who have this spirit of revolt that no matter what you do, they have no respect for authority. And unfortunately, they don't have respect authority in the church nor out the church. They don't respect leaders, pastors, conferences, nothing. They don't respect the leaders, the authorities. And we need to respect the Bible ordains that as long as it doesn't violate our biblical principles, we are to obey. I guess you've read this before. You think you're doing God's work, okay? It said, these things have I spoken unto you that ye should be not be offended. Scandalized. They shall put you out of the synagogues. Yeah, the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God's service. So here we have somebody killing a Christian, thinking he's doing God's service. And these things will they do unto you because they have not known the Father and nor me. Now we know this is going to happen to the church. This has happened in the past and will happen in the future. But I'm not talking about the persecution. I'm talking about a principle that this shows clearly. The principle is the following. There are many people who do things thinking that they're doing it because God's happy with it. But when in reality, they don't know who God is. I mean, they know who He is, but they really don't have a communion or connection with Him. And second, they're hurting others. That's the principle we need to get off of that text. So if we do know God, we love one another. We try not to hurt each other. We try to do the best so that we don't get, in this case, infected. That's part of the love. We show our love by doing it. Okay? And sometimes, there have been times when I'm not talking about coronavirus, but when I've done things, not violated any principles, but done things just to please another person, just because I love them. I don't want them to be offended. And many times, even if you don't believe in the Mass, well, just come on. It's not going to hurt you. Love your brother. Paul used to do this. He said, when I visited the Jew, I made myself a Jew. When I visited the Greeks, I made myself a Greek. I adapted myself to everybody. And we should have that same principle too. Respect, love, compromise in those things that are not biblical principles, that are just secondary, you know. So you could think, we could think that we're doing God's service when we are not doing God's service. We're hurting somebody else, and at the same time, we think we know Him, and what does it say here? How is it possible that a person can kill another person, think he's serving God, and then Jesus clearly says, well, they don't know the Father. So it's possible. Well, we talked about that part. Argument number 4, hydroxychloroquine. I know this is not so important, but this is one of the medications that was promoted for coronavirus. It's an anti-malarial medication, and some people apparently seem to improve, but many of the studies are showing now that there's even one study that shows a higher mortality rate in people who use hydroxychloroquine. So I don't think that maybe applies not to everybody, but some people are saying, oh, in New York, some nurse told me, oh, they banned this in New York, they banned it in this place. And I was checking online the laws of the different in New York, and they did not ban it. They just restricted it to certain patients when they found that they couldn't use any other treatment and they wanted it, they gave it to them. They just didn't want anybody buying it by bulk and not having it accessible when they really needed it. So, okay. Masks suppress the immune system because when you reduce the oxygen level in your body, your immune system doesn't work. Well, yeah, if you're going to use masks 24 hours a day and you're not going to clean them and you're going to suffocate yourself and you're going to sleep with them, and maybe. But you know, what are the guidelines? When you can't do social distancing, use a mask. That's the guidelines. So how many hours a day do you have to do that? That might be just 1 hour, 2 hours. And as soon as you use that mask too much, you clean it. If it's a cloth mask, you have a surgical mask, you throw it away, you use another one, a fresh one. So this thing about causing hypoxia, and I tried to look for studies, I couldn't find not even one. So many of these things are based on like logic. They kind of half truths and half lies. They take a truth. Yes, you could develop, if hypoxia could cause you to develop a problem with the immune system, and then they take that and they adapt the mask to it where it doesn't show anywhere. You could develop hypoxia and as a result, decrease your immune system. So it's half truth. And people have taken it, but then what people haven't told you is that this really suppresses the immune system. Nobody talks about that. Eating too much in your potluck. I've seen people come to potluck, even though we haven't had one of those for a while. Man, look at this mountain. As a matter of fact, I tremble when they go first. Because usually by the time they're finished, there's nothing. And there's still a big line back there. Brother, I tremble, really. And do you know that suppresses your immune system? But we don't talk about that part, right? So overeating and overweight suppresses your immune system. So yeah, let's do something in potluck. Let's protest. Only a certain portion, I don't know, whatever you want to do. Yes, brother.
What about the breathing in and out and the germs?
Yeah, the purpose of the mask is to protect the germs from coming out.
I know, but if you keep breathing in.
We're going to get that. We're going to get to one slide, yeah. Okay, we're going to get to that, yeah. So there's a study showing that eating too much decreases your immune system. Nobody's talking about that part. Everybody wants to eat a lot. Okay, argument number 5, and I put a few there. Causes hypoxia, so as a result, you could develop cancer because cancer cells develop under low oxygen. You see, and that's true. Cancer cells do develop under low oxygen. Actually, the less oxygen you have, the cancer cell multiplies more. There's some cancer cells that are more aggressive, and they say that the aggressive ones are the ones who use less oxygen. But then they translate all that to the mask automatically. They take one truth, okay, that was discovered in the past, and this is more complicated than just putting on a mask. There's thyroid problems, there's problems with enzymes in the body, there's a whole series of things that happen in the body that causes the body of a cancer patient to not use oxygen efficiently. It's not only the breathing. So there's no long-term study that shows mask causes cancer. This just taking a truth again and applying it the wrong way. Okay, okay. There's some other people that I was seeing online that said, okay, if you want to if you want to protect others, wear the mask the normal way. If you want to protect yourself, wear the mask in reverse. You never heard of that one? Well, me neither until yesterday. So, there's a lot of things out there that you're going to see on the internet. Brothers, if you want to research, do real research, anybody could do it. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be, of course, you will have to maybe have a medical dictionary next to you if you want to understand a lot of the terms. But just go to, hablo en español, scholar.google.com. Scholar.google.com. And when you read that, when you go there, you type anything you want on a search, and all the medical literature that's been written about that topic comes out. Woo! You click on it, you study it. That's what I did with this. Scholar.google.com. That's it. Anybody could do it, and you could research it and see if what I'm saying is true. I got everything from there. Brother.
For those that don't know, the 3-ply mask like we're wearing, the cotton on the inside catches the moisture when you breathe. The center layer is actual filter, and the blue layer is the waterproof, so that it keeps your moisture from going all the way out. So
Okay.
that's the reason where it's a 3-ply mask, and the white always goes against your face.
Yeah. And the original intention of the mask was to protect, when a surgeon puts a mask, is to protect the patient from getting infected from him, That was the original intention of the mask. So the purpose of it is for you to protect others, and then when the other person wears the mask, they don't spill out virus drops, and you don't spill out virus drops. When both of you do it, then everybody's protected, okay? Okay, so that's a hoax. Don't worry about that. There's other hoax. There's something I haven't put here, saying the coronavirus, you could kill it if it's in your mouth. How do you know if it's in your mouth? Anyway, unless you test for yourself, you just take a blower and the heat. This is what they say. Even if it burns you, but at least you killed the virus. Yeah, now you have a burned oral cavity that is open, and if the virus comes in, it goes in very easy. Second, the virus needs 56 degrees, and some studies show up to 75 degrees centigrade to be inactivated. So if you take the minimum number of 56 degrees centigrade, that's 136 degrees centigrade to be able to burn the virus. You're going to be burned. You're going to know what hell is all about just by doing that. Okay? So don't try to do those things, okay? Don't try to follow those crazy ideas on sometimes they come with good stuff. But try to look for resources that are reliable. There are natural doctors out there and medical doctors that are doing the right thing. Okay, masks can cause, this is what you're asking. Okay. Masks can cause reinfection due to breathing in the virus. But you see, again, it sounds logical, but the data doesn't support it. When you take the countries and the states that have emphasized masks, you don't see increased infection, you see decreased infections. Asian countries that do it are the countries that have been able to control and stop the virus more effectively, even China. And New York, if you compare New York with Arizona, Texas, and Florida that were lax, New York, we have a good governor. I can't say, I don't know if he's bad in other things, but at least in this, he's good. He's making all his decisions based on data. And he has this big staff informing him. He doesn't reopen, he's in the third phase of reopening, but you know why? Because there were days in New York, the biggest hot spot in the world. Almost 400,000 people contracted the virus and 30,000 people died in New York. You know how many have been dying recently? Sometimes, some days have been 0. From 42 to 0. 0 to 42. I haven't kept update lately, but the trend is still downward. It's still downward.
New York is still, so they're reopening each phase of reopening. Now they're in the third phase of reopening, and they still are suggesting that everybody continue to wear the mask, everybody continue to protect themselves, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So even though it sounds logical, and it does, but when you compare the data of the countries and the states that have enforced masks, you don't see it. You just don't see it. And what else was I going to say about it? That's basically what I'm going to say about that. So basically the data, even though it sounds logical, the data doesn't support it. We haven't seen more infections for wearing the mask. We've seen less infections by wearing the mask. Okay, we should never, I guess this went with the other part where we're talking about revolutions. Some of the slides are not in order. But you can see when Jesus was threatened by death, he didn't confront them. Okay, try it, hit your back, He says every time he was persecuted here, he would just simply go to another city. When he was persecuted there, he would go to another city. If he went to another city. That is what Jesus did. And he told the disciples, if they don't accept you in one city, just brush out your feet, go somewhere else. He didn't tell them to revolt. He didn't tell them to... Who were the ones who were revolting at that time? The zealots. Okay? How many zealots we have in our church? Hope not. Here, I don't think any. But sometimes we act like zealots instead of acting like Christians. Persecution is going to come. We should never provoke it. It's going to come. Even when they put the Sunday law, Ellen White says we shouldn't challenge. There'll be a time where we'll have to just speak openly like that. But in the early stages, it says we should go Sunday and give Bible studies. So in a non-challenging way, we're teaching the people, no, Sunday's false, keep Sabbath, That's what we're doing. The CDC guidelines are basically follow social distancing. We're kind of not, with all this study that I've been done, I'm kind of seeing that wearing the mask is even more important than social distancing. But the combination of everything is important. It's better to do, because since masks don't protect 100%, they protect only from 48 to 78. Then you have social distancing. Then now, let me say, this is mostly for indoor activity. Outdoor activity is different. We're going to see this. This is one of the other arguments that people use. Most of the outbreaks, well, I have it right here. I'm going to talk about that. Okay, the protesters. This is the last thing we're going to talk about, and we're done. I think those 20 minutes went a little too long. Okay, reasons why the protesters didn't provoke a surge in coronavirus. Now, I don't have all the answers, and I know this explanation may not satisfy everybody, but this is the best I could do with that, okay? First of all, outdoors. It seems the outdoors seems to disperse the virus. Sunny, warm, humid weather hurts the coronavirus. It doesn't destroy it completely, but we know that UV light destroys the virus, okay? But this study, I like this study very much, because in this study it showed that of 318 outbreaks in China, only one happened outdoors. The rest happened indoors. So in other words, especially in a place like where we live, outdoors, the possibility of getting infected is very low, but indoors is the problem. And that's why we emphasize this inside the church, that this is indoors. Okay? So most of the outbreaks that have happened, like I showed you with the church in Korea, have happened indoors, not outdoors. Okay? And it says here, a non-peer-reviewed study in Japan indicated that the odds that a primary case transmitted COVID-19 in a closed environment was 18.7 times greater compared to the open air environment. So our care should be mostly indoors, where social distancing is very difficult, etc., where there's not a lot of wind, etc., to disperse the virus. If you're outside, you're talking, and some of that virus comes up, the wind takes it away, it's not going to stay there. In an indoor place, the virus, even though they say it's not airborne, but basically the virus could be in that area where you're talking without a mask for at least 3 hours, okay? For at least 3 hours. Okay. And you can see these are one of the protests. And this is what I know many of the protests, they did not wear masks, especially those revolting ones, violent ones. But I was seeing the news, seeing these people give their testimony. They were willing to, they say, I'm willing to give my life. I know I'm risking my life, but I'm willing to give my life for this cause against racism. And they still, most of them who were conscious still wore masks. They sanitized frequently. Second and third, they had even these protesters that were very well organized. They even had checkup booths where they could check for if the coronavirus was positive or whatever. So they had protection. They had a lot of them had a lot of protection. Like you can see here, they're protesting, but they have all their masks. They were even so protective that they were worried because the police in New York were not wearing masks. So this is what they say: they are blatantly snubbing us. Protesters feel at risk as some New York police department officers don't follow guidelines to wear masks. So you see, many of them, I'll say all of them, but many of them were concerned about this issue and trying to protect themselves. They know they couldn't keep social distancing, but they try to do all they could to protect themselves. Which, in this case, if that's the case, well, then this proves that masks are more protective than anything else. Because they didn't really keep social distancing, but a lot of them wore masks and they protected themselves. It means that the mask was very protective from them getting any coronavirus. Okay, most of the protesters were young. I think that's the next one. Okay, the protesters made up. I think I passed that part, or I missed that. Okay, I guess I might have left it out or deleted it. But the other thing is, I would say more than 90% of the protesters were young people who have a powerful immune system and protect themselves. You know, they're young. That doesn't mean that they can't transmit to others, but still, we won't know until September, October, even though the incubation period of that has passed. But basically, they're young people who have little possibility of getting infected now. Now compare this to what's happening in Texas, in Florida. They reopened and all the young people started going to the bars and restaurants, etc. And now the high level of coronavirus is in the young people in those places. See the difference? Outdoor, indoor. So they're locked up in the indoor, in a restaurant, in a bar. Plus, in a bar, this is one thing, and I think in Florida or Texas, they were ordering not to use loud music. Why? Because when they use loud music, they would sing loud. And we already saw in the video what's going to be the result of singing loud. All those droplets coming out. So now studies are showing that most people who are getting the coronavirus, and it's thought that by the second wave, will be young people. But it's mostly, so the most contamination is coming not from the protesters, it's coming mostly from when you reopen and all this mass of people are starting to go to the bars and these locked up places, even their workspace, and not protecting themselves. Okay, protesters, this one I didn't believe that much, but it says compared to the general population, protesters made up a small portion of the overall population. I put it, that's what the experts say compared to the regular population. It says their argument is that yes, there was a lot of people outside, but that also forced most of the population to quarantine even more, because most people were afraid to come out, so they would go into the rooms and into their houses and not come out until the protests were over. So even though there were people outside in public, it caused the great majority of the population to do more quarantining. Okay, reasons why protests didn't provoke it. This is the funny one. It says the experts, the scientists, when they don't accept God or anything like that, but they say, yeah, the other thing was an element of chance. We're just lucky. Okay, that's not no scientific reasoning. Now, I could tell you something, and I will finish with this, and it's when I saw the protests, I almost cried. Because even though some people protest, why? Because it showed that America still has something good in it. People were willing to raise up against racism. There's still something good in America. Holy Spirit is not departed from us yet. Okay, so When I saw that, wow, this is still America. So I told myself, if in the church we could unite like they unite as one person and finish the gospel, this gospel will be finished fast. But we still have to learn that we have to unite, become one man. That's the exact phrase that the Spirit of Prophecy, the great controversy says, and we will go out as one man, finish the gospel. That is what we need to learn. If there's anything you've got out from this topic, is that we really need to give ourselves to God. We really need to become one man. And then we'll be the church God wants us to be. God bless.
Amen.